6 days, same coach, same tournament, largely the same player pool available, and an almost completely different team walks onto the field. At the 2026 World Cup, the USMNT had already done the hard part. Top of Group D, into the knockout rounds, qualification locked in before kickoff. Their last group game was against Turkey, a team already eliminated with nothing left to change in the standings. Head coach Mauricio Pochettino made 9 changes to his starting lineup. 9. Only 2 players kept their spots from the match 6 days earlier. That's not a tweak. That's the most changes any USMNT coach has made between 2 World Cup matches, ever. More than in 1998. More than anyone before him. His stated reasoning? Rest players carrying knocks, and don't risk a suspension for the round of 32 over a game the standings no longer needed. 3 weeks later, 2 other coaches faced a related question, and the answer got messier. France and England met in the third-place game after both lost their semifinals. The trophy gone, only a smaller, still real prize left. Both rotated hard, 7 changes each. Thomas Tuchel for England, Didier Deschamps for France. Same number. By the count alone, identical call. 7 changes each doesn't by itself tell you how either side valued the match. Squad depth, fatigue, and tactics all factor in. But watch one of the players who stayed. France kept Kylian Mbappe, and he didn't play like a man in a dead match. 2 goals, and the World Cup's all-time scoring record. Afterward, he talked about wanting to send Deschamps out with something to show for it. Whether the record was also part of it is something only he knows. Either way, he was competing for something concrete, even with the trophy gone. That's the actual puzzle. Not why every player on both benches did what they did, but why a match with the title already gone for both sides, 7 changes each, whatever exactly that reflects, still had at least one player with a very live personal reason to go all in. Whatever this match doesn't matter was tracking at the team level. It wasn't the whole story underneath it, in the same 90 minutes. Here's a strange psychology finding that, on the surface, has nothing to do with football. Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen has spent decades studying how people's priorities shift as they get older. The common explanation is the one you'd guess. Age changes you. Older people get more selective about who they spend time with, less interested in meeting someone new, more likely to choose the comfortable and familiar. We call that being set in your ways. But Carstensen and colleagues ran a study that breaks that story. Researchers asked older adults to imagine something very specific, a medical advance that would let them live roughly 20 years longer than expected, in good health. Their actual age, energy, and circumstances that day hadn't changed at all. Only their sense of how much future was ahead of them had. And their preference in who they wanted to spend that time with shifted. Once they imagined a longer future, older participants chose the same kind of social partners younger people tend to choose, weighting new, informative connections alongside the familiar ones, instead of leaning almost entirely on the familiar. On that specific measure, the usual age gap in the data mostly disappeared. That doesn't mean personality is fake or that age never matters. It clearly does, elsewhere, and this one manipulation can't rule out every other factor either. But it's still evidence that at least part of what looks like a fixed personality difference tracks something more specific than age. How much future you think you have left. That's a related point to the one the field just raised, not the same evidence. Nobody's claiming this proves what was in Mbappe's head. What it shows is that horizon always has to be asked about a specific stake, not the match as a whole. His team's tournament horizon and whatever he was personally still playing for didn't have to hit 0 at the same time. A gap like that is enough to make a single, "this match doesn't matter" story stop covering everything happening in the same match. So let's sketch a simplified version of that, roughly. Worth saying plainly first, A coach protecting rested players, a striker with something to prove, and a psychology experiment aren't the same mechanism. They're not solved by one equation. What they share is one variable, showing up differently each time. How much future is left for whatever's at stake? Narrower than one law explains everything, but it's the claim this video can actually back. Picture two lines on a graph. One is the value of exploring, trying something new, testing an unproven option, gathering information you don't have yet. The other is the value of exploiting, sticking with your best-known option, the safe and proven choice. This is a simplified picture, not a law of nature, but here's the general shape. As you move along the x-axis, time remaining, the two lines tend to cross. Early on, exploration's line tends to sit higher. Information you get now, you often get to use again and again. A young player you test out this month might start for you for years. That early cost can pay itself back many times over. As the remaining time shrinks, exploration's edge tends to shrink with it, sometimes fast, because new information now gets used once, or not at all, before the window closes. Both lines can lose value as opportunities disappear, but exploration loses something extra, the downstream value of whatever it would have taught you. Put roughly, exploring is worth more the more it's likely to change what you do, and the more chances you'll still have to use that change. Shrink either of those towards zero, especially the second one, and even a genuinely exciting unknown option stops being worth the near-term cost of finding out. Pochettino's decision isn't really an entry in this explore or exploit story at all. It's a different, related move. Protecting a known asset because a valuable near future is coming up fast. He said as much afterward. Rest players carrying knocks, and don't hand 4 yellow-carded starters an unnecessary suspension risk with a round of 32 just days away. That's not explore versus exploit. It's the same underlying variable, how much future is left and how much it's worth protecting, showing up as a different kind of decision. Once you see the shape of that model, it shows up in business and money too. Take a startup with 24 months of cash left, experimenting, a pricing test that might fail, a pivot, a channel nobody's proven yet, is usually easier to justify here, because there's enough runway left for a bad bet to still pay for itself if it teaches you something useful in time to act on it. That's not a guarantee the experiment is a good idea. Cost, reversibility, and burn rate matter too. But a long horizon is one thing that can make it affordable in the first place. Give that same founder 2 months of runway, and the calculus usually flips, provided what's already working can actually keep the company alive. Shipping it, doubling down on convinced customers, and protecting the remaining cash becomes the safer default. Not because the founder got more conservative, but because there are almost no future chances left to act on whatever a new experiment might teach. If the known approach can't reach survival on its own, a short horizon doesn't mean play it safe. It means make sure whatever you do next actually fits the time you have left. Investing runs on a related but different version of the same variable. Less pay now to learn something, more how long can this money ride out ups and downs, and it complicates a common piece of advice. Young people buy stocks, older people buy bonds. Age is doing the work in that sentence, and it's a rough proxy at best. How long until you actually need this money matters more directly. A 25-year-old buying a house next year has a short horizon for that money, same as anyone in that position. A 60-year-old whose retirement money won't be touched for 15 years has a long horizon for it, same as anyone with 15 years to go. Horizon doesn't replace liquidity needs or risk tolerance, but it's a better starting question than age alone. So here's the one thing to actually do differently. Before your next "should I try something new or stick with what works" decision, don't reach for a trait. Don't tell yourself, "I'm just a cautious person," or "I'm someone who takes risks." Ask 3 things instead. How long until you'd actually know whether the new thing worked? How many more chances would you have to use that answer once you had it? And is the possible upside big enough to be worth what trying costs you now? A job, in months until you'd realistically know and could act on it. A relationship, in the real-time horizon of what you're building. Money, in years until you'd touch it. And check whether there's more than one horizon running at once. Team result versus personal record. Company survival versus your own career runway. Defaulting to personality language instead of those three questions is the signal you skipped the real work. There's a field that had to make a version of this precise enough to hand to a machine, and it's worth seeing what they landed on. In many reinforcement learning setups, whether an agent explores is handled by its own mechanism, a separate setting for gambling on something untried. That's not this. There's a different, more basic number, the discount factor, gamma, between 0 and 1, setting how much a future reward counts against an immediate one. Push gamma toward 1, and value decays more slowly with each step forward, stretching the effective planning horizon. Push it toward 0, and value decays fast, practically only the immediate reward counts. Gamma doesn't switch exploration on or off, and a low gamma doesn't erase the value of information generally. It shrinks how much anything that only pays off later is worth counting in the math the agent is optimizing. Go back to that field. Pochettino protecting a near future. Mbappe still playing for one of his own. Different mechanisms, same variable. Most people think their decisions come from who they are. I'm adventurous. I'm cautious. I'm a risk taker. Some of that's real. But across a lot of repeated, learning-dependent decisions, the ones where trying something new only pays off if there's time left to use what you learn, a meaningful chunk of what feels like personality tracks a question you've never been taught to ask. How much future is left for what you'd learn today to actually matter? So next time you catch yourself about to explain one of those choices with a character trait, ask that question first. For each stake that's actually still live, how much future can still benefit from what I learned today? It's usually running quietly underneath the explanation you'd otherwise reach for. If this is the kind of pattern you want to keep noticing, the ones hiding in plain sight across sport, psychology, money, and machines, that's exactly what this channel is for. And here's a question worth sitting with until the next one. Once you know it's actually worth exploring, how do you decide which unknown option deserves the benefit of the doubt in the first place?